consequences of getting it wrong is quite dire. So revocation of the license, which will mean that if you're sponsoring anyone, they will no longer be able to work for you. Penalties of up to 60,000 as well per worker, which remains. So eventually you could become a British citizen through that route. So I think both have pros and cons, and it really depends on what your goals are and where you want to go with it. Strategy paper, which the government released this week, is really important. So they've highlighted 8 key areas which they want to focus on growth for the UK. So I would say look at those industries of whether the employer is someone that really is invested in this, or it's maybe someone that's not doing it maybe for such genuine reasons. If an employer is asking for you to pay towards a cause, that's an absolutely red flag. That's something that they're not allowed to do. They shouldn't be asking. It goes back to the planning point, financially planning where you want to be, and not kind of leaving it to last minute. 6 months will mean that you know, a reduction will mean that you really need to think ahead, because it's a shorter time period, unfortunately.
Welcome to Akoni Tech Talks. In this episode, we'll be unpacking all you need to know about visa sponsorship with Samia. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And to start us off, can you explain what a visa sponsorship license is and why it's important for UK employers who want to hire international talent?
Absolutely, really great question to start with. So essentially a sponsor license allows employers to access global talent. Without the license, they will not be able to sponsor international talent that they, to fill in gaps, in career gaps. I think it's an absolutely amazing tool if used in the correct way to tap into that young talent if they're hiring from universities, and also just add diversity, right? So which is so important for businesses. I think if used in the correct way and strategically, it's a brilliant tool to expand your talent pool.
Absolutely. So what steps does a UK company sort of need to take then to become a licensed sponsor, and how complicated is that process?
Okay. I'll answer this backwards. So how complicated is the process? Not really, if you know what you're doing, but it's really paper heavy. There's a lot of admin within it. It's easy to miss off, even tick a box that you should be. So I would say it's process heavy, not very complicated. However, the real challenge is once you've got the sponsor license. So getting the sponsor license, most people will say, oh, I could do that. It was only filling in some forms online and everything. However, it's the compliance issue. So once people have a sponsor license, there comes a responsibility with that. And the Home Office often reminds us it's a privilege to have this license. So making sure that they're updating their records, making sure they've got the right key personnel identified, is really important, because the consequences of getting it wrong is quite dire. So revocation of the license, which will mean that if you're sponsoring anyone, they will no longer be able to work for you. Penalties of up to 60,000 as well per worker, which is quite a hit, especially if you're a small startup, to get things wrong. And also the reputational damage. I think that's really something that would impact most companies more so than the financial consequences. So
absolutely. And so for international students who are studying in the UK, what are the main visa options available to them if they want to stay and work in the UK after graduation?
Absolutely. So there's two dominant routes, I would say. Firstly, the skilled worker visa, and then also the graduate visa. So they're primarily the ones that most people would tend to turn to. But then also you've got the innovator visa as well. You've got the high potential visa, and global talent as well, which they could tap into. And also, if they ever find love, there's the family routes that they could always switch over to as well, which then wouldn't tie them to an employer. So there's a couple of routes there which they could explore.
Yeah, absolutely. And so how does the graduate route differ from a skilled worker visa? What are the sort of pros and cons of each?
So the graduate visa naturally isn't linked to sponsorship to an employer, so
Right.
it's a lot more flexible. Obviously, it's time-based, so it's usually 2 to 3 years depending on what degree or PhD that you're doing. So it's flexible, however, it doesn't lead to indefinite leave to remain. Whereas the skilled worker visa, it is tied to an employer. You've got the salary threshold to think about, but it does lead to indefinite leave to remain. So eventually you could become a British citizen through that route.
Yeah.
So I think both have pros and cons, and it really depends on what your goals are and where you want to go with it. So yeah.
And at what point during, a student's studies should they start preparing for that post-graduation visa or those sponsorship opportunities? Because the process in itself sounds like there's a lot that goes into it.
There is, and from a financial point of view, so they need to start thinking about if the employer's not willing to kind of pay full costs of the application, immigration health surcharge, so they need to start saving for it. I think the sooner the better. A lot of people will say the final year. I say as soon as you kind of land in, once you've got yourself settled, start really thinking about what your future looks like, what your career pathway is, and start having those conversations with relevant industries, networking events, as early as possible.
So are there certain industries or types of roles that tend to be more open to sponsoring international graduates?
Traditionally, yes, there has been. So the financial services, the tech industry, healthcare have always been big sponsors when it comes to sponsorship. Creative industries are slowly catching up as well. But I think for students that are looking to the future and planning, the strategy paper which the government released this week is really important. So they've highlighted 8 key areas which they want to focus on growth for the UK. So I would say look at those industries. I can name them. I have noted them down. So advanced manufacturing, clean energy industries, creative, defence, digital technologies, financial services, life sciences, professional services and business services. So they are the 8 kind of focus areas of the government, and you have to remember there'll be operational roles as well as technical roles within those industries. So don't think immediately like, oh, my degree doesn't line up to this, so there's no chance for me. But there will be opportunities on both sides, but definitely kind of see if you can tap into those, I would say.
And what should students be looking for in an employer or a job offer to know whether the visa sponsorship sort of is a real possibility for them?
That's really interesting. I think students should always remember when they're at an interview stage or even earlier, it's a two-way process, right? So you're there to kind of find out about the company as much as the company is there to find out about you. So not to shy away and ask questions. Are you a registered sponsored holder? How long have you held the sponsorship? How many people do you currently sponsor? Quiz them around some of the details, salary thresholds, SOC codes, and I think that will give you an indication of whether the employer is someone that really is invested in this, or it's maybe someone that's not doing it maybe for such genuine reasons. And I think we'll come on to that in a moment as well. So I think that's what they need to just be confident to ask the questions.
And so we've talked about how students can, feel more confident in how to approach their employers or potential employers and understand if visa sponsorship is a real possibility. But what sorts of red flags do you think they should be aware of when kind of navigating those job offers and sponsorship discussions?
Absolutely, that's a brilliant question, and I think something that students really need to be savvy around. So there will be, if an employer is asking for you to pay towards a cause, that's an absolutely red flag. That's something that they're not allowed to do. They shouldn't be asking you in any way. Or the immigration health surcharge. So they are 2 costs that the employer must absorb when they're sponsoring somebody. They may ask you to pay towards the application fee and the immigration health surcharge. That's absolutely is permitted. But also they cannot say to you that you must use their legal provider.
Right.
There's no problem using their legal provider as long as you've had the choice of going to somebody else. So the Home Office has tightened their rules around this recently, more to protect the potential employees, because there was a lot of abuse where people were asking for obscene amounts of money for a cause, and then not guaranteeing a job at the end of it. So yeah, you do need to be savvy, and if anyone's asking you for money, you need to do your homework around that.
Absolutely. And so kind of speaking about the red flags almost leads us on to the myths and maybe common misconceptions around the visa sponsorship. Are there any that you come across that you'd sort of maybe like to clear up for anyone listening?
Yeah, I think there's generally two that I will hear from students, and that's sometimes students come to immigration lawyers thinking that we're recruitment agencies, or we have a tap in to employers, and often they will say nobody's offering sponsorship. And that's absolutely false. There is a license of sponsor holders that the government has on their website with hundreds of employers that do offer sponsorship. You just have to, like anything, be persistent, resilient, and find an employer that's right for you, and just not give up. The other thing is, I think they always see the graduate route as a free ticket, but it's not. That needs to really be used as strategic time. A lot of my employers that I work with, what they'll do is use the grad route as almost an exercise to see if the candidate's suitable for them. So they may take you on for 6 months on the grad route and then switch you over to the skilled worker route, right? So which gives the opportunity for you and the company to work out whether you're a right fit. So that's another kind of myth. If the company says they don't sponsor, don't take that as a given. Explain to them that you have the option of the grad route where they don't need to sponsor you, and then potentially if they like how you work and you're a great fit, you could always then explore sponsorship. So yeah, I think that those would be the two to keep in mind.
Absolutely. And so for students who kind of want to stay informed and sort of better understand these different rights and options, are there any particular resources you'd recommend?
So I think it can be quite overwhelming when you go online. UKISA is a body which is particular for students who are in the UK, although their focus is around their university kind of admission and support, but they do also offer post kind of support as well. Webinars, LinkedIn articles. I would say that's kind of most probably what I would point them towards. And also networking. You cannot, and I think I've mentioned this a couple of times, you cannot underestimate the power of networking, and going to industry relevant events. And people are really helpful. It can be quite daunting when you're young to approach someone who seems very important, but just explain your situation, and if they can't help, they usually will point you towards the right direction. So yeah.
And if you could give one piece of advice to international students hoping to stay in the UK and build a career, what would it be?
Start planning as early as possible. I think you really do have to, over and beyond kind of anyone who's a UK talent, and also know your value, believe in yourself. You've got something to offer, and your skills are relevant. So I think that's what I would say.
Are there any other final tips that you think students should know as part of this process or be mindful of?
I think the only thing that comes to mind is they should really be mindful of how they're using their 20 working hours. I think it can be so tempting to go into something such as in hospitality, which isn't directly linked to your career path. But if you can find something, even if it's short spells of work which links to your degree, that would be really helpful in your future. And it's most probably easier for me to be sat here saying that, but if you can, and if they can really strategically use those 20 hours, I think that would be brilliant.
Absolutely. And so we come on to the sort of trending topic round, and obviously there's been so much happening recently with the immigration white paper and the kind of UK requirements that are changing. So we've seen the UK is increasing the financial requirements for international student visas. So for example, from 2025, students need to show even higher savings to be able to study here, and visa fees are also going up. These kind of changes can make an already stressful, transition even harder, especially for young people navigating not only a new system but a new country.
Yeah.
So in your experience, how can we kind of create more supportive environments to help international students during these challenging times? Is there any other things they should be mindful of, especially with the kind of immigration paper that's come out?
Absolutely. I think, let's touch on the immigration white paper. A really key point to remember, it is only a white paper. There's nothing that's been set. Whilst we do anticipate most of these changes will come through at some stage, they haven't done so. So it makes it even more trickier to kind of plan ahead. But there is talk of changing the RQF level for skilled worker visa from level 3 at the moment, which is A level, to level 6, which is degree level. There's also talk of increasing the English language requirement, bringing it in also for dependents as well as main applicants as well. They are planning to possibly eliminate the immigration salary list, which allows employers to offer a lower salary threshold. However, on the plus side, they are thinking of looking at those 8 areas that we spoke about earlier and making visa routes easier. So we have to remember this government is focused on growth, and they are talking cross-department, which is really a positive change, and they have said that they will look at making it easier, and I'm hoping that includes for students as well. But it goes back to the planning point, financially planning where you want to be, and not kind of leaving it to last minute, where it's very much a knee-jerk reaction, and then it does feel like nothing's going in your favour. Also to remember when you're speaking to employers, that there is a salary discount available for those who are recent graduates. So if you're under 26 or a recent graduate, you can rely on the new entrant rate, which allows employers currently to sponsor you at a lower salary threshold. Some employers may not be aware of that. So I think students themselves maybe need to speak to an immigration advisor or do some research online, which can be quite overwhelming as well. And if they're unsure, have that conversation or an initial consultation to say, look, this is my position, I'm planning, what are my options that I can go to an employer with. And with the postgraduate visa, the white paper has mentioned that that's possibly going to be reduced to 18 months. So that 6 months will mean that a reduction will mean that you really need to think ahead, because it's a shorter time period, unfortunately, for you to kind of make your plans for the future.
And so in true Akoni Tech Talk style, we have to finish the episode by asking you your top picks. So for quick fire, if you had to pick iPhone or Samsung?
iPhone. I'm completely into that ecosystem, so that's without saying. Always.
And Spotify or Apple then?
Apple.
And Netflix or going to the cinema?
Going to the cinema. Popcorn, big screen, nothing beats that.
And laptops or tablets?
Laptops always. I just find I'm more productive with them, so
And ChatGPT or virtual reality?
I've never tried virtual reality, so I would be tempted to say virtual reality because I think, that'd be quite cool.
And video calls or voice notes?
video calls. Always more personal, or in person.
Yeah. And finally, if you could bring back one piece of tech that's either now evolved or it no longer exists, what would it be and why?
It would be the iPod, because I think they were so fun. The little wheel music on there. I think, they need to upgrade and bring that back.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on, Samia, and clearing up all the kind of common myths and key things to know about the visa sponsorship license. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me. Hopefully your audience will find some of that information helpful.